Alrighty, so today we're going to talk about the last team that got eliminated from the playoffs in the second round last season, and it's definitely one of the more anticipated one that I'm doing in the Moving Forward series. Yes, it's time to finally talk about my team, Minnesota United, in the Moving Forward series episode. Now, I might be a biased Loons fan, but I would say Minnesota probably had the craziest and also the most surprising season out of any team in MLS this year. I mean, I think if I want to look at how this season has gone for this Minnesota United team, it really kind of break down into three parts. The first part was just a season of kind of surprises because they were heading into the season just with a lot of mess. Like they didn't hire their new GM until late into the off season, and that also means that they didn't make a lot of move until really late into the season, and then they also didn't get their new head coach in till the third game of the season, and then kind of went on a surprising run as a result, despite the fact that the squad doesn't have a lot of quality whatsoever. And then the second part of the season is when the clock really struck midnight on the Eric Ramsey the hype train, and that well, the team was definitely decimated with a lot of players missing due to international duty, and also injuries, of course, play a part. They pretty much fall apart in the second part of the three part I look with this season, and really in the middle of the season as well, and then really just kind of out of nowhere in the third part of really what sums up this season for the Loons, they started to be good again. And big part of that is because they actually decided to be very busy in the summer transfer window, make some signings to drastically improve this team to a point where they were probably one of the hottest team heading into the playoffs. Won a playoff series as well for the first time since 2020. But then, yeah, unfortunately, the old saying, all Cinderella story and great understory is gonna have to come to an end somehow, and yeah, it definitely come to an end against the LA Galaxy, and I was kind of unfortunate to have to basically witness in person as well on that fateful Sunday afternoon in Carson as well. But that being said, they did finish the season 15-7-12 and finished with 52 points, which is the second most point that this team has ever had in the regular season. In terms of the goal scored, 58 goals. That is the most that the Loons have ever scored in a single season for in their franchise. They give up 49 goals with a plus 9 goal differential. They finished sixth in the Western Conference, and yeah, they got absolutely trounced by the LA Galaxy in the second round, lost 6-2 in that game. Though, again, there's really no shame because, again, as I mentioned with this team, they were playing with house money heading into the playoffs. Anything they do in the playoffs, no matter how bad it is, it's going to consider a successful season. I even said after that 6-2 loss against the Galaxy, I'm going to reiterate by saying that I still think it's a successful season, even though it kind of ended up in a bit of a whimper, and especially in a thrashing like that. But heading into talk about the last five seasons for this team. So last season, we know that was kind of the end of the Adrian Heath era. We knew this was coming with the way that Adrian Heath he has took this team as far as he could, but eventually things are going to get stale, and it seems like the axe is pretty much upon him, and it did. They finished 11th with a 10, 11, and 13 record, finished with 41 points. The first time they did not make it to the playoffs since the second season of their tenure. And mind you, the first two season, yeah, that was kind of part of the Adrian Heath 3 year plan. In the first two season is kind of like, we're just happy to be there. Whatever happens after that, we'll think about it once we get to the third year of the 3 year plans. And I'll get to the part about the third year of the 3 year plan that seems like it worked out in the end. But in 2022, they finished sixth with 6-14 record, finished with 48 points, but they lost to FC Dallas in the first round. It was a very spirited game as well, where they really pushed Dallas to the brink, only to lose in the PK shootout. In 2021, they finished in fifth place with 13, 10, and 11 record, finished with 49 points, but unfortunately lose to the Portland Timbers in the first round. In 2020, they finished fourth with a 9, 7, and 5 record and finished with 34 points, and that was the year where that was the furthest that they ever got in the playoffs in the Western Conference Final. But you probably already know what happened in that game. I will not mention what happened in that game even to this to this day. But in 2019, they also finished in fourth place with a 15, 8, and 11 record and finished with 53 points. But unfortunately, they also lost to the LA Galaxy in the first round, and that one was kind of painful in the way that they were like the only team that lost at home in the first round during that week as well, and that was a game where it was also kind of a game of missed opportunity as well because the Loons were the better team in that game against the Galaxy, but they just couldn't finish, and that's kind of also a theme of why I've said that at time watching this team playing at home, where when they don't finish it, I just immediately think, oh, it's one of those games for the Loons that they can't finish if their life depends on them. But in terms of top goal scorer for this team, you got Bongi Longwane. Kind of had a very quiet double-digit goal scoring tally. I mean, not a lot of people talk about how he actually had a decent season. I mean, I know in the beginning he kind of struggled, but as the season goes along, he started to found his form that he found doing his time with this team in the Leeds Cup, and really kind of made him a household name with 11 goals. You know, another guy that is starting to become a household name, it's Kelvin Yoboa. I cannot wait to see how he's gonna do next season. I mean, if he can put 9 goals in the back of the net during his short 3 month stint with this team, can you imagine how good he could be next season as well? He might be the finally the answer in that number 9 position that this team has been looking desperately ever since Christian Ramirez. I mean, this team has not had a guy that has come close to what Christian Ramirez has put, but the goal scoring that he put throughout the season. I mean, not only we saw a shade of Christian Ramirez, but he could be a guy that could even be better and could easily be a guy that can really quickly become the all-time goal scorer for this Minnesota team if he can continue the production that he's shown really in this season with this Minnesota team. And then you also have Tani Oluwaseyi with 8 goals. He actually signed a contract extension, despite the fact that I've heard there's a lot of rumor that he was gonna be traded. They decided to ink him to a long-term contract. Now, obviously, he did kind of cooled off a little bit throughout the season. I mean, in the beginning of the season, he was absolutely electric. He did cool off a little bit, but that was mainly because the when Kelvin Yoboa came into this team, he kind of took all the minutes away from Tani Olotrey. And one thing that makes Tani really good is that he was a very good impact player coming off the bench as well, and that's why I think this is a great option for them to keep him. I mean, I know you could easily sell him right away, but for a guy that has been really good coming off the bench, and especially a very speedy guy coming off the bench to stretch already tired defense, yeah, I think that's a good 1-2 weapon that the Loons has in that number 9 position. Then you also have Robin Lod with 7 goals, really a revitalized season for Robin Lod, and also not a big surprise that this attack definitely looked like a little bit of itself. Self when he was missing out for the entire last season, and kind of also replaced the role that Emmanuel Reynoso was filled for this team. And then you got Sun Bin with 6 goals to finish off the top 5 goal scoring list for this Minnesota team. Top assist leader, Robin Lod, of course, unsurprisingly, with 14 assists. But then you got Josef Rosales with 8 assists. He is definitely one of the most underrated fullbacks in the league. I mean, the fact that we talk about how there's a lot of good fullbacks out there in terms of providing the assists and providing cross. He's definitely one of them. Now there has been rumor the fact that he could be sold off in the off season, and I really hope that Minnesota can hold on to him as much as possible. And if anything, I hope that they don't just accept the first offer like they did with Kervin Arriaga in the middle of the season. But if they do get the right offer, I mean, it's hard for them to keep hold of him because he has just a lot of talent, and it will be very tough to try to replace him if they do sell him off in the future. Then you got Tani Olashari with 5 assists, followed by Bongi Longwani with 4 assists, and Hassani Dotson rounds up the top 5 with 2 assists for this Minnesota United team. Best win of the season. There were definitely a couple of great wins that this Minnesota team has in the beginning of the season and the latter part of the season as well. But I'm actually going to go with the 3-0 win that they had against Colorado on September 28th. That was probably the most complete performance I've seen this Loons team play in a very long time. I mean, not only the fact that the attack was humming in that game, the defense was absolutely shut down against a Rapids team that I know the Rapids kind of had a bit of a downturn, but they still were doing very well under Chris Armas, and the fact that they absolutely shut them down like that in that game, I mean that was very impressive from this Loons team, and again, probably the best performance that they put. I mean, I could have also gone with the 3-0 win that they had against Charlotte on the road. In fact, I probably could have gone with that one because we already talked about before how it's not easy to win on the road against Charlotte, and we know how good their defense is, but the fact that I think Minnesota is the only team that actually put three goal past Charlotte because Charlotte was one of the best defensive team in the league. If not, I think if I remember, they were the best defensive team in the Eastern Conference. But I simply want to go with the 3-0 loss, maybe just get or the 3-0 win against Colorado, maybe just kind of recency see bias a little bit because that was just such a complete domination that they had against the Rapids. Now, the worst loss of the season, there were definitely a couple that I could have chose. You could have think that I chose the 6-2 loss against the Galaxy, but I'm actually going to go with the 3-2 loss against DC United. I mean, the 6-2 loss against the Galaxy, yes, that was bad. But at the same time, if you remember, that was a game where if you look at the first half of that game, Minnesota was actually doing pretty well on the attacking end. It would look like that was one of those games where it was going to be a shootout, and if they can figure out the defensive front, then maybe they have a chance in the second half. I mean, it was still a close game. It was 3-2. Yeah, they didn't quite figure that out in the second half of that game. But instead, I got to go with the 3-2 loss that they had against DC, mainly because, I know this was during a time when they were going for a downturn and they were in a bad run of form, but they had this win in the bag against DC. Like they had this game all wrapped up, and then they just completely they collapsed in the last 2 minutes of the game, giving up two late goals to lose that game, and just almost a little reminder of what I saw last season from this team, giving up late leads, dropping points at home. That's also been one of the things that's been very frustrating for me, this season, that this team once again hasn't been very good at home. They were much better, I will say, this season at home, especially in the latter part of the season. But there were times where where once again they did not look good at home whatsoever, and also have these kind of resources where they just let one slip away where it could have been easily 3 points and easily something that Minnesota desperately needed because they were on a bad run of form up to that point. Now, in terms of average attendance, 19,597, good for 22nd in the league. That's been pretty much the number for ever since Allianz Field has filled. And I've said it many times before. I wonder when are they exactly going to try to expand Allianz Field. I mean, it's been said since day one that I think this team built Allianz Field a little bit too small. The fan base is definitely there in this team. I mean, this team was averaging 20,000 plus doing those first two year at TCF Bank, and those were very bad Minnesota team. That is. So imagine now you have a team that has good future, and I know tickets to Loon's game are still relatively affordable. I'm kind of surprised that is the case because with how much the demand for the tickets for this team has been pretty high. The tickets are actually pretty affordable, but with this team continue to be good, I'm pretty sure the team is gonna raise up those tickets prices, especially against some good team. But not to mention, no, I do think that they might think about expanding, and they have a chance to do so. I mean that's the stadium that they built. There is definitely a chance for them to expand up to 24,000 in the near future, and I won't be surprised it could be the case because I still think it's too small. I mean, it's good that we fill the Allianz every single week, but I would love if they could build a little bit more to continue to fill up the stands, and that especially if they're now being good again with the tickets price being up and the demands being there. Yeah, it would be good if they continue to expand and actually fulfill what they were originally going to do, which is a chance to expand the stadium up to 24,000 plus. Now look at the MVP of this team. It's got to be Robin Lod. I mean, I could easily gone with Kelvin Yeboah because of what he did coming into this team in the middle of the season. But throughout the season, it's just simply Robin Lod. I mean, he is a guy that, again, he almost made me forgot who Emmanuel Reynoso is. And, notice I only mentioned Reynoso name twice because we already know what happened in terms of that ugly situation that happened in the middle of the summer, and it ends in a bit of a bitter taste to the fan base mouth. But still, Robin Lod has really picked up the slack to a point where even though he's approaching his 30s, he does not look like that the guy that is approaching his 30s. He looked like an ageless wonder that can still do it for many years, and I expect that could be the same case again next year. I mean, he's always been a very consistent player ever since he joined this team, and I expect that could continue heading into next season. Now, in terms of disappointment, I mean, you were expecting me to put Emmanuel Reynoso, didn't you? I think that would have been too easy to put, but instead, I'm actually gonna go with Caden Clark as a disappointment, and the big disappointment mainly because I had a lot of hype about him when they signed him and when they bought him back, and especially I did think that it was a mistake for this team to decide to sell his homegrown rights to the New York Red Bulls, and look how good he turns out to be. Now, obviously, things didn't quite work out with him now playing for the team that he should have been playing with in the beginning, that is Minnesota United, and part of that is due to the fact that he just really never fit the structure of this team. And we kind of saw it now that he is with Montreal, how much he accelerate. It's all about fitting in the right structure and playing the right position. I don't think Minnesota play in his 10 role that he should be playing, and it's hard for him to do so because when you have Robin Love being in that spot, and with how good he's been, you can't simply just decided to plug in Caden Clark right there, and expect the same production. But still, I do think it was kind of a disappointment, consider I was really expecting him to not only have a great homecoming but also really help this team on the attack, and it just really quite didn't quite work out that way. Young player to watch. I'm gonna go with Taniolo Ashray. This one is pretty easy. I will give a good shout out to Loic Mansavi, who of course very highly talented player coming out of the Loon second in team that is, and potentially could get minutes if this team is it serious about youth development, which is pretty much almost non-existent at this time. But yeah, Taniolo Ashray, definitely a great young player to watch. And again, even though his production definitely slowed down as the season goes along, he is a guy that is on the Canadian national team radar, and a guy that I would not be surprised if he have another good season. He will be sold off to Europe for a big amount of money, and could be right up there in terms of considering to be one of the top guys for this Canadian national team. I mean, in his position, it's not going to be easy to crack because when you have the likes of Kyle Laren playing in that same spot, and it's not going to be easy to do so. But still, if he has another good season, he's definitely gonna not only be part of the Canadian national team, but a guy that can be sold off for a huge amount of money for this Minnesota team. So what went right for this team? In a transitional year full of disjointed and at time turmoil, talking about the Reynoso situation, they made the playoffs. I mean, in if you would have told me this team with all the craziness that they have dealt with throughout the season, that this team would make playoffs, I would not believe you. I thought this team was going to completely fall apart, but yet somehow in some way, with all the roller coaster that they have, they showed that perseverance to make it back to the promised land. Talk about the resurgence of Robin Led as well. I mean, he easily could have been in running for a comeback player of the year this season as well. What a season it's been. It feels like he almost is having the same journey as what Jordan Morris did when Jordan Morris torn his ACL for the first time, where people were concerned, is he going to be the same player? Well, not only he was the same player, but he got even better, and that's what we've seen with Robin Lett this season. And then, of course, as I mentioned, this was a very fun team to watch down the stretch. I mean, with the way that how this team played down the stretch, that this was probably the best I've seen this team has played probably since ever. I mean, I have not seen how fun this team play with the attack being good and also the defense being relatively solid. It's really the first time where I saw a complete team. Something that usually never see with this team. Usually, when this team is good on the attack, they're very leaky on the defensive front. But then when they're very good on the defensive front and keeping clean sheet, they can't score a goal to save their life. There's just no complete performance instead I've seen, and that really changed in the latter part of the season, where that was probably the funnest I have being a Loons fan, and seeing how well they were charging up the standings, and really making a statement that yeah, they could be a dark horse team heading into the playoffs. So what went wrong for this team? So yeah, the midfield still suck. I mean, it's no disguising it. As much as the attack and defense was very good, the midfield was still a big issue, and that it can easily be overrun. We've seen it many times before. Both Will Trapp and Hassan Dodson. Those two guys clearly not starting quality material, and really ever since the loss of Carvina Arriaga, the midfield just have never looked the same, and that is something that they absolutely need to address. We also talked about the free fall they had in the middle of the season. It looked like that was kind of the end, and we're already thinking about, well, it's a transitional year. We'll just get it together again heading into next season. And then, of course, the clock struck midnight against the Galaxy. And I don't want to make excuses saying that the 2 week break that they had in between really killed the momentum of the team. But at the same time, it kind of did in a way because coming off of that big win against RSL, which I was actually in watched that game in person at Allianz Field, you just had a sense that if they did not had that long break against the Galaxy, or that long break before they play the Galaxy, they would have had a legitimate shot against them because yeah, against the Galaxy they looked like nothing, like they were for the past month down the stretch, which is a very dynamic team on the attack and then on the defensive front, relatively solid. Because keep in mind, heading into that game against the Galaxy, the Loons have only given up 2 goals ever since the last loss that they had against FC Cincinnati. So the fact that they gave up pretty much more goals in that half alone compared to that down the stretch, yeah, again, just shows you how the clock eventually struck midnight and all Cinderella story has to come to an end, and unfortunately, it come to an end of what turns out to be eventually the what is now the defending MLS Cup champion. So moving forward, how this Minnesota team is going to look. Again, they need a DP number 6 badly. I've said that this was one of the biggest need that they need in the summer transfer window. They didn't really address that, so I'm really hoping they will address it this off season. I mean, the way that I think they're gonna have to address this is they're gonna have to buy down Timu Puki's contract. Though I don't know if they can do so, and especially with the way that Timu Puki his contract doesn't end until till June. There could be a case where they might not even think about addressing that DP number 6 spot until the summer transfer window, which again I don't think that's ideal because I really want this team to invest in the midfield because that is literally the biggest weakness of this team and maybe is what holding this team back of taking the next step heading into next season. But at the same time, they also so we'll need to figure out the Timu Puki situation and that again we'll see whether or not they can buy down his contract or even exercise a buyout as well. As good as Timu Puki was in his first season for Minnesota, he's also been a massive disappointment and could be another guy I could set that easily as a disappointment for this team. They still need some defensive help, especially with the way that when you look at this back line, Tapia's obviously got sold back to Mexico. Michael Boxall, we know that as much as he has persevered throughout his year with this team, there were times where it looks like father time kind of caught up to him. And then Jefferson Diaz, despite the fact that I thought he had a decent run down the stretch, and despite him just getting completely exposed in that game against the Galaxy, he can also be very highly volatilized at time as well, especially for an attacking center back as well. He's going to have to maybe learn that as a center back. Yes, I've seen center back sometimes be very aggressive going forward, but sometimes you need to back down that aggression a little bit and not get himself caught out of position as we've seen sometimes before, especially in that first game and in his debut, which was an absolute nightmare in that game against the Sounders. And then I also think that if those moves are going to address, then yes, the future is definitely going to be bright again for this team. Now, so far, when I look at this offseason, it's been a very quiet offseason for this Minnesota team. The only signing that they made was in the re-entry draft by getting Kip Keller. I'm really hoping the rumors will start to come. I mean, I'm not at that level yet that I'm concerned the fact that this team is not making move this winter. I trust the new regime and I trust KEA will make the right moves to improve this team because I think that if the right moves are there, this team can legitimately be a Western Conference contender and could be right up there in terms of the best in the leagues if they get the moves right. But that is if they of course get the moves right. And again, I really hope that the signings will start to come for this team because if they don't, I mean, as much as I look at this team and I think this team can be a playoff team again heading into the next season, I don't think this is a team that I can say that they could go deeper than what they did in the second round of the playoffs, and that's where I'm starting to get concerned again, where we're starting to see something that really kind of is the reason why this fan base was so divided toward Adrian Heath. Where yes, this team is good enough to make it to the playoffs, and he does a good job to drag this team into the playoffs. But then, yeah, this team just doesn't have the talent to compete with the big boys that we see in the Western Conference. That is the two LA team and even the Seattle Sounders as well. But there you have it. That is pretty much it. Looking at Minnesota United in the Moving Forward series episode. Let me know in the comments below what do you think of this video, and if you're a Loons fan like myself, what do you think is the MVP, the support man, young player to watch, what went right, what went wrong, and most importantly, moving forward, how is this team going to look heading into next season. But until then, hope you guys enjoy this video, and I will see you guys next time.